lot of people have asked me to give my thoughts on the whole Elon Musk situation, so I'm sure you've heard Elon Musk made this gesture at Trump's inauguration, which when compared to Hitler, looks an awful lot like a Sieg Heil. He did it twice. The gesture seems very forceful and deliberate, but some people are saying, no, it wasn't a Sieg Heil, it was autism. Elon announced, or in the words of several ABA websites, for some reason admitted that he has, in his words, Asperger's.
The first person with Asperger's to host SNL.
Incidentally, he also wrongly stated that he was the first person with Asperger's to be hosting SNL. This was actually Dan Aykroyd in 2003. But now because of this, some are claiming that this was Elon doing an autism, not a Hitler salute. It was stimming. It was a bout of autistic joy at Trump's triumph. Did you know sometimes autistic people move weirdly when they're excited? Okay. It was social awkwardness. It was misreading social cues. It was miscommunication. It was dyspraxia. It was a result of his special interest. So is autism an excuse for this? And if not, why is it not an excuse? Aren't we supposed to give disabled people grace? Isn't autism a disability? And wait, was Elon Musk ever actually diagnosed autistic? Personally, I, as an autistic person, have absolutely zero grace to give here. I always try my best to see nuance and assume good intent where possible, but I don't think it's possible here. But I'm going to talk in depth about why. Part 1. First of all, what did Elon actually do? And was it what people are saying it is? And what even makes something an actual Nazi salute? I'm sure you've seen it already, but let's take a look at the full clip for some context.
Yes! This is what victory feels like. Yeah! And this was no ordinary victory. This was a fork in the road of human civilization. Okay. This you know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, you know, important, some are not, but this one this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you. My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured.
It's definitely a deliberate motion in my mind. He makes a little grunt as he does it. And from some camera angles, you can see the crowd's reaction. You kind of hear the crowd keep on cheering. Some people are pointing at the moment that he does this gesture and kind of seem to be grinning. I don't know whether that's just a shock reaction, whether you could even really process what was happening in the moment. I don't know. But there are definitely reactions from the crowd, most of which seem to be very positive reactions to this. And he does the gesture twice, once in the other direction. He then pauses for a second and says, "My heart goes out to you."
My heart goes out to you.
So what are the characteristics of a Nazi salute? And does this match? List of things I never thought I would be doing on my channel, but here we are, you know, back to history class. So it's usually performed by extending the right arm with a flat hand, palm down, fingers together. It is sometimes called a Sieg Heil or a Sieg Heil salute because that is what the Nazis would sometimes chant simultaneously. Sieg Heil translates as Hail Victory. This gesture isn't only associated with Hitler and the Nazis, it was actually used before the Nazis or around the same time as the Nazis by Mussolini and the Italian Fascist Party. It is sometimes called the Roman salute. You may have seen people saying this online and kind of saying it wasn't a Nazi salute, it was the Roman salute. It's called that not because we have any evidence that the Romans actually used it, but because of this painting, this French painting from the late 1700s, which is thought to be what inspired Mussolini and the Nazis, whoever used it first. It depicts three men extending their arms with a flat hand, palms down. As well as the Roman salute, it is also referred to as the fascist greeting or the fascist salute. For example, in this article about how less than a month ago, rows of black-clad men can be seen extending their right arms at a rally in Rome. This gesture and other similar gestures have been adopted by various far-right groups around the world, and it is therefore the most common and most recognizable far-right or white supremacist hand sign. If you want to signal to people, particularly those who are aligned with you, that you are a fascist or you hold far-right beliefs, basically this is what you would do. I think it's hard to argue that what Elon did here isn't a match. German media seems to agree. There is no need to make this unnecessarily complicated. Anyone who raises their right arm in a sweeping and diagonal manner several times during a political speech in front of a partly right-wing extremist audience is doing the Hitler salute. There is no need for allegedly or similar or controversial. The gesture speaks for itself. It is documented in the video. Anyone who then wants to reinterpret it, anyone who does not want to see the Hitler salute, does so on their own account. Anyone who, for example, thinks they have to discover the older Roman salute as a supposed Musk reference right now is demonstrating, above all, their willingness to reinterpret it in a pleasing way. I mean, literally within the first line of the Wikipedia page about the Roman salute, it's talking about the fascist salute. Note how German media can't even show what Elon did because it is illegal there. It is actually illegal in many countries, including Austria and Slovakia and Australia, unless it's for scientific purposes, apparently. But sadly, it is not illegal in the USA, but I doubt that Elon, the richest man in the world, can do any wrong now that Trump's in power anyway. But what are other people saying about this? Are they really trying to use autism as an excuse? And if so, why is that an issue? So part 2, the pits of X. Firstly, let's have a look at what's actually being said in the pits of X. So a historian has 7.6 thousand retweets on, I have criticized Elon Musk many times for letting neo-Nazis pollute this platform, meaning X. But this gesture is not a Nazi salute. This is a socially awkward autistic man's wave to the crowd where he says, "My heart goes out to you." I'm also posting the whole video because you can tell the context better by hearing what he is saying throughout. A random Nazi salute makes zero sense here, even if he wanted to do that. I personally think it does make sense. We're in a political context. We're celebrating, as I say, Sieg Heil means hail victory. We're celebrating a supposed victory. And less than a minute before Elon performs the gesture, he says the word victory twice.
This is what victory feels like. And this was no ordinary victory.
So this historian thinks it is a wave. This is a wave to the crowd. A wave. Elon Musk has been on this earth for 53 years. Like, let's not insult him. Like, even if he has dyspraxia, as I do, I think he has learned how to wave. And yes, there is plenty of evidence that he does know how to wave when he wants to wave. This is a socially awkward autistic man's wave, though, apparently. Does that not just read as so infantilizing and belittling? He's just a little autistic man. He doesn't know any better. He just wants to say his heart goes out to you. He just wants to throw his heart with force across the room twice. Why are we trying to deny Elon Musk agency? I mean, we're not and we can't. He has so much power now. There's nothing we can do about it. I think it's dangerous to undermine and underestimate him in this way as the little autistic man who can't wave. He is the richest man in the world. I think this man strongly believes he knows what's best for the world. I think he strongly believes he knows what's best for the future of humanity.
It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured. We're going to have safe cities, finally, safe cities. Secure borders, sensible spending, basic stuff. And we're gonna take Doge to Mars.
And he did his best to ensure he has the power to enact that future. And denying autistic people agency in general is not how you do autism acceptance. Autistic adults are adults. Wherever possible, we should be allowed the freedom to make our own decisions. And we should be allowed the freedom to make our own mistakes, which may mean that there are consequences to our actions. Or not, because this isn't illegal in the USA, so no consequences, I suppose. We shouldn't be implying that autism inherently makes a person incompetent, unable to make decisions, unable to act of their own free will based on their own beliefs and the conclusions that they have come to. I think that has such scary and dangerous implications for all autistic people in many different scenarios and settings. I think a lot of people get confused. Autism itself is not an intellectual disability, but around a third of autistic people do also have an intellectual disability. As far as I'm aware, Elon does not. However, even if he did, in the UK we have something called the Mental Capacity Act, which I really appreciate, under which you must always assume that a person, whether they're autistic and or has an intellectual disability, is able to make their own decisions until you have proof that they are not. Every adult, whatever their disability, has the right to make their own decisions wherever possible. I don't have any reasons or proof that Elon Musk does not have the mental capacity to make his own decisions. And as much as I would like to discredit the man, it would be harmful for autistic people for me to do so. Another tweet. Elon is autistic. He isn't a Nazi. Angry face. I'm angry right now. I have a brother who is autistic, and I know a thing or two about this. Assuming that all autistic people are the same is always a red flag. Your brother is not Elon Musk. I'm sure your brother is not affiliated with the far right, which is wonderful. Maybe he is. I don't know. I don't know him. But it doesn't mean that another autistic person can't be affiliated with the far right. Again, we are able to make our own decisions on our own choices. Most autistic people have difficulty expressing feelings. Elon does not express feelings very often. When he put his hand over his heart and then put his hand out towards the crowd, he was attempting to share love. That's actually difficult for many autistic people. He felt strongly about something and was trying to express that. I think he did feel strongly about something. I think that's clear in his face. But why is it impossible that that thing could be fascism or a particular political ideology? For many people to suggest he was making a Nazi salute is completely beyond acceptable and shows their ignorance or that they are being intentionally deceptive. Elon was expressing love. Stop trying to make it into anything else. And then someone called Lindsay replied to this guy and said, couldn't agree more. His love could be seen and felt by everyone except those with ice cold hearts. Red heart emoji. Is it just me or does this feel kind of like the stereotypical idea that all autistic people or just disabled people are just sweet and innocent and pure? He was just a man trying to express his love. Are we assuming that autistic people are kind of childlike here? No, Elon is an adult and he is a human being. I have a whole video about how autistic people can fall anywhere on the political spectrum. I'll leave it linked. There's a lot of people in the comments saying, yeah, I'm autistic and I'm also far right. Autistic people are people. It actually is like the autistic kid being bullied, someone said. Except the thing is, as I just said, Elon is not a kid. Elon has more power than any of us, which is not usually how that dynamic works. And just to throw it out there, because this tweet started with Elon is autistic, all caps, he isn't a Nazi. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Why not both? You can be both autistic and a Nazi. I am sure it has happened before. So you can be autistic and anything. You can be autistic and a bad person. As I pointed out in that other video about politics and autism, the QAnon shaman tried to get a lighter sentence for participating in January 6th as a result of his autism diagnosis. The guy who tweeted this also compared Elon's gesture to this clip. Touching heart and putting your hand out to the crowd is sharing love, nothing to do with the salute. But in this clip, you can see Tim Wall's palm is facing the crowd. His arm is slightly bent. It's a wave. It looks like a wave. But according to this guy, it was almost exactly the same. There's a lot of people doing this all over X, making comparisons, pretty much always with stills, with carefully chosen stills from videos. When you see the full video clips that these stills were taken from, though, it's very clear that it was a completely different motion. It's very disingenuous. I don't think it's easy to make a wave look like a Nazi salute accidentally, even if you have dyspraxia, which I do. In fact, if Elon does have dyspraxia or struggle with his movement in any way due to the fact that he's autistic, that probably just means he had to practice. And to be honest, when you look at it, it does kind of look like he practiced. As I say, it looks very deliberate, very forceful. I think the touching my heart and the my heart goes out to you, which is something he has said before, I think that was added deliberately for extra plausible deniability. Elon just can't really lose. He gets to simultaneously signal to the far right, but he can also make anyone who criticizes him out to be a woke snowflake who has a manipulative plan to make out that everybody who disagrees with them is Hitler. Are we really at the point where you can't say, hey, maybe don't do a fascist salute, or at least something that is very comparable to a fascist salute in a political context? Can you not say that anymore without being called oversensitive, without ironically being made out to be some sort of extremist. Another tweet, police siren emoji. Is Elon a Nazi, all caps? No, he's autistic. I don't know why I had to say it like that. I just felt like it needed to be said like that. 3 exclamation marks. Elon Musk is known to have autism. That's why he's stuttering and acting weird sometimes. I mean, there is a difference between stuttering and this. There is a large jump, many steps that need to go on between that. The move that the radical left tries to pretend as a Nazi, spelled with a T, salute, is actually a result of autism. I'm just putting it out there. It's not on the diagnostic criteria. It's not there. When autistic people are excited, they might act weird. As a Jew, and as someone who has an autistic family member, I do not feel offended by that. I know where it comes from. As an autistic person, I have no idea where this comes from. Again, you having an autistic family member does not mean that you know the intentions of all autistic people in the world. We're all different. I mean, please do not lump me in with whatever this is. Don't lump most autistic people in with whatever this is. This, what he does earlier in the video, this is a maybe slightly awkward, excited dance. This is intentional. I feel like you can see him look at the crowd immediately afterwards to sort of assess their reaction before he then turns around and throws another one in the other direction. Just for comparison's sake, here's a clip of Elon doing a completely different "my heart goes out to you" gesture. So he did have options. He did have a different style that he could maybe lean into. Someone commented, WTF, I'm autistic and I know what that salute means. It's not acting weird in quotation marks, it's being hateful. Hold people accountable, ... God, skull emoji. The person who tweeted this, who has an autistic family member, as they were sure to point out, said, "You're more R-worded than autistic." So this is the example of one of the people who is sticking up for Elon as a vulnerable autistic person, apparently. They are using slurs about disability. Cool. Glad to have you on the autism acceptance team. That's sarcasm. They're not on the autism acceptance team. I mean, making out that Elon is so incompetent that he can't help but do offensive gestures. I mean, that to me has similar vibes to the Twitter executive who called Elon special needs in a derogatory way back in 2022.
He has Asperger's.
Yeah, I know that.
So he's special. You're special needs. You're literally special needs.
But even the Anti-Defamation League, which is an organization against anti-Semitism, they refer to what Elon did as an awkward gesture as well. It seems that Elon Musk made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm, not a Nazi salute. But again, we appreciate that people are on edge. However, Elon has tried to sue them for defamation before, so maybe that doesn't make them super keen to criticize him, I don't know. Part 3, Elon's response. I personally cannot see this as an honest, socially awkward mistake because of Elon's actions. I think if you look at Elon's actions both before and after this, they help to provide a bit of context. Worrying context, but context nonetheless. It is obviously possible to genuinely make mistakes, do something socially awkward that could end up offending someone. I think as autistic people, probably many of us have experienced this, where something we've done has been misinterpreted and taken the wrong way. But if you accidentally do something deeply offensive because you misunderstood social cues, or because you got excited and flapped your hands in the wrong way. By the way, this is not how any autistic people I know stim. This was not in my list of 70 plus ways that autistic people stim. But if that was the case, if it was a mistake, would you not just be so deeply ashamed and apologetic when it was pointed out to you? I agree with this tweet. If Elon Musk really didn't want his gesture to be interpreted as a Nazi salute, he could have just hopped online and said, "Hey you guys, I think Nazis are deplorable," and I was miming tossing my heart out to the audience. And he has made a similar tweet before, so he is definitely capable of doing this. Instead, he went on Twitter to claim that all of the pushback was a dirty trick from the left, that he had already predicted. He retweeted himself. And then also, instead of apologizing, Elon started to make Nazi puns on Twitter. And before I read these out, remember, we're not talking about an edgy comedian making controversial jokes here. We're not talking about the edgy kid who's trying to get himself kicked out of high school. Don't say Hess to Nazi accusations. Some people will Goebbels anything down. Stop goring your enemies. His pronouns would have been he, Himmler. Bet you did not see that coming. Someone commented below Elon's tweet, humor is the fascist way to defeat these people. So another pun, another edgy pun. But ironically, yes, hiding behind a mask of humor, that would provide you with yet more plausible deniability. It was just silly puns. You're all so sensitive. You can't say anything anymore. Freedom of speech. Even more telling though is the fact that 5 days after making this gesture at Trump's inauguration, Elon Musk made a surprise appearance via video link at an AfD campaign event. The AfD, Alternative for Germany, is a nationalist far-right German political party. And this is what Elon had to say there.
I'm very excited for the AfD. I think you're really the best hope for Germany. There's something I think that is just very important is that people take pride in Germany and being German. It's okay to be proud to be German. This is a very important principle. It's good to be proud of German culture, German values, and not to lose that in some sort of multiculturalism that dilutes everything. We don't want everything to be the same everywhere, where it's just one big sort of soup. I think there's frankly too much of a focus on past guilt, and we need to move beyond that. Children should not be guilty of the sins of their parents, or even let alone their parents, their great-grandparents, maybe even.
So at this point, we are only 2 days away from Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is very likely why he brought this up. You have to admit that this is a strange move to make immediately following such a controversial gesture, had it genuinely been an accident or misinterpreted.
And I think it's very important. I hope that German people unite and strongly support AfD. Go!
It's hard to believe Elon is even just trolling at this point. He'd have to be a very, very committed troll. Hey, and look, he does know how to wave. Suddenly we're in Germany where it is illegal to do a Sieg Heil, and he knows how to wave.
All right, bye guys.
There we are. He's a quick learner. And then they interestingly make hand hearts at each other.
Yes, good.
The entire audience, we wish you, President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, all the best to make America great again. You're the best. You're the best.
Yeah. Let's exactly.
I don't know. Is this going to become some sort of new far-right gesture? As a Swiftie, I really hope not. That wouldn't be good. Is this the new Roman, in quotation marks, salute? The Roman hand heart? Part 4. So is he even autistic? So I don't believe Elon being autistic is an explanation for this, but some people don't even believe that he is actually autistic. Apparently Elon's 2023 biography by Walter Isaacson, it contains a quote from his mother stating that Elon wasn't diagnosed as a child. Some people see that as maybe he was diagnosed in childhood. Some people see that as he has never been clinically diagnosed. So usually the autistic community is pretty welcoming of self-diagnosis, but often a major reason why people can't access a clinical diagnosis is lack of financial resources. Elon isn't lacking there, so does this still apply to him? Another reason to not get a diagnosis might be fear of stigmatization, especially at work. Doesn't really apply to Elon because he's been quite open about his diagnosis, or having Asperger's in quotation marks in his own words. And we'll get on to his continual use of the term Asperger's in a moment. There are some people who just don't feel like diagnosis is necessary for them. Maybe they've got to a certain age, they're like, what is it going to do for me? It's not like I can access any treatment or anything like that. It's not really going to change anything about my life. I'm happy with my self-identification. But should someone like Elon be able to publicly announce and associate himself with that label if he isn't clinically diagnosed? It's maybe a bit more difficult for the community to stomach if it's going to be used as an excuse for somebody doing unsavory things, and then it turns out they don't even have the diagnosis on their medical record. Someone said, funny how most autistic people have to jump through a million hoops just to prove their autism. Meanwhile, the worst and most privileged people can just excuse their actions by claiming autism, and people just believe them. Someone else said, thanks for pointing it out. The world's richest man certainly could get the best help to diagnose him, so why doesn't he? We know why. Because they might diagnose him with a cluster B personality disorder like narcissism, or as antisocial personality disorder. So personally, if you know my channel, I'm not a huge fan of speculating about anybody's diagnosis. This is not out of any particular kindness to Elon, it's just a general stance that I have. I haven't seen his medical record, I don't know. He does seem to describe traits that seem consistent with being autistic. I wouldn't come out and say he definitely isn't. I tend to go by the motto of just believing what people tell me about their own identity. And as Chloe Hayden said in her response to this situation, autistic people can be bad people. I think sometimes there can be a tendency. This happened with Sia, so she made a movie about autism that went down very badly and then came out a couple of years later to announce that she had been diagnosed herself. A lot of people still do not believe and think she kind of paid for that diagnosis. I spoke about that whole situation in this video. It does seem like Sia views her autism diagnosis as somewhat of an excuse for her actions around that whole situation, which I spoke about in another video here. I personally don't see any reason to disbelieve Sia's diagnosis, but I mean, I feel similarly to this, to how I felt about the whole Sia thing. Obviously two very different situations. One is a movie with bad representation, one is potential fascism, puts things into perspective. But I think as with Sia, Elon's diagnosis or lack thereof, as I say, I've never seen his medical record, I have no idea. It just doesn't really matter to me because autism is not an excuse for this, especially when you are clearly so unapologetic about any harm caused. You are laughing in people's faces for being upset about this. And yeah, he seems to be doubling down. So there we go. Part 5. So does Elon have Asperger's? Finally, it is interesting that Elon always refers to himself as having Asperger's. I don't think I've ever heard him refer to himself as autistic. He's referred to his daughter Vivian as a bit autistic when he was trying to discredit her and undermine her judgment, which is not particularly cool. Some autistic people do just prefer different labels. That's true. Some people are attached to Asperger's because that was the diagnosis they were given in childhood, even though it's no longer officially a diagnosis label, and anybody who was given that diagnosis now falls under autism spectrum condition. There is something called Aspie supremacy. This is the idea that autistic people who meet the former diagnostic criteria for Asperger's syndrome are superior to other autistic people. Some people still believe and still refer to Asperger's as a milder form of autism, or associate Asperger's with a sort of genius stereotype of autism, which, you know, a lot of people do see Elon as a genius. And also some people who subscribe to this idea of Aspie supremacy feel like people diagnosed with Asperger's are superior to neurotypical people, superior to non-autistic people, maybe are like the next stage of human evolution or something like that. You'll sometimes see phrases like that thrown around. It is an idea that seems to have picked up a bit more steam recently, particularly on the right. And in September last year, Elon tweeted this with the words "interesting observation." I already spoke about this a little bit in my other politics video. So basically he's saying if you're not a man, and preferably an autistic man at that, then you can't do critical thinking. People who can't defend themselves physically, women and low T men, parse information through a consensus filter as a safety mechanism. They literally do not ask, is this true? They ask, will others be okay with me thinking this is true? This makes them very malleable to brute force manufactured consensus. If every screen they look at says the same thing, they will adopt that position because their brain interprets it as everyone in the tribe is believing it. Only high T alpha males and A neurotypical people, brackets, hey autists, exclamation mark, are actually free to parse new information with an objective "is this true" filter. This is why a republic of high status males is best for decision making, democratic, but a democracy is only for those who are free to think. He retweeted that on the 2nd of September 2024 with the caption, "Interesting observation." He just said women are incapable of independent thought. Elon is praised as a genius so often, I wonder if he doesn't maybe think he's some sort of next stage in human evolution. I don't know, I'm not inside his brain, but I can see how some people might come to that conclusion, and I can see how maybe this concept of Aspie supremacy would be appealing to him. I think, you know, Elon was bullied when he was younger. That's an experience a lot of autistic people have. Maybe that can make an ideology that suggests you have more power or are better than the people who bullied you. Maybe that's appealing. I don't know, I'm just speculating here. I think it's also very necessary to point out here, as I'm sure many of you who watch my videos already know, Asperger's syndrome was named after Hans Asperger. After his death, he was an Austrian physician. New research revealed that Asperger had been collaborating with the Nazis in a more sinister way than previously imagined. Essentially, he had been knowingly deciding which autistic children deserved to live and which autistic children were unworthy of life, and he referred them to the place where they would die. And the research paper urges caution basically when using his name going forward as a result of this. You can read more about it in the book Asperger's Children. I'll leave this book linked down below. Ember Green also has a great, very in-depth, very long video about Aspie supremacy, which I will leave linked down below. Regardless, even when it was its own separate diagnostic label, Asperger's syndrome has always been considered part of the autism spectrum. I always like to try and make that very clear. So if Elon does, as he says, have Asperger's, then he is autistic. Regardless of whether Elon is autistic or not, I think there is a lot of evidence that he's pretty into the far right at the moment. No matter how many Jewish friends his father has.
50% of my friends are Jewish.
Either way, it's hard not to see the richest man in the world getting so excited, jumping around the stage as a result of an election result, a victory that he in a large part funded, as at least a little bit sinister. And that's even before you throw in this. I guess we'll have Neuralink brain chips to solve our autism before we know it. But then what excuse will we have? This video has been extremely heavy to script and record. Please look after yourself. Go and do something fun. Last week I made a video about plushies, and ignore the slightly dramatic title. It's a positive video. I imagine this video will be demonetized. I have said the word Nazi a lot. I don't think advertisers will like that very much, or will want to be associated even with just Elon's gesture, which is pretty telling in itself. Like, there was no way I was going to put a sponsor on this video. If you would like to join the Patreon, as always, no pressure, but there are 19 exclusive videos on there and counting. There should be lots of exciting stuff to come over there if you do want to join, and there's a lot of stuff already on there, and there's a podcast on higher tiers, and yeah, hours and hours of stuff to watch if you've already finished on here, and most of it is pretty uplifting and positive. I can't really think of many things that aren't over there. And also, when you join the Patreon, you get access to the private Discord server as well, and it's a really, really lovely positive space. I'll be seeing you in my next video very soon. Hopefully we won't be talking about Elon Musk. I imagine not. Let's do something lighter next week. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. That's a wave. That's how you wave. There we are.